All right, so I promised in the last video I was going to do 13 and 14 together, but 13 actually ended up being a lot. So 14 is here. So we are still in Exodus, second book of the Bible, chapter 14. And we're going to cover all, what is this, 31 verses. Okay, so it starts off with God giving instructions to Moses and telling him to tell the people, here's what I want you to do. I want you guys to go to this particular area. I want you to camp there. You're going to be next to the sea. And he says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart so that he's going to come after you. And now we're going to see the final part of my plan. We are going to see the final, you saw 4 fingers of justice. You're about to get the full fist at this point. Like this right here is gonna be the piece de resistance. This right here is going to be the final thing that frees you. Okay, so and it's going to show God's glory again. He is getting ready to do something really, really big. And so this is the thing that's going to show all the Egyptians who God is. Everybody who believed was cool, but there's still people who did not believe. And he's going to show them. There are people in other countries and cities who are hearing about what's happening to Egypt that are now listening to see how this is going to happen. And so in verses 5 through 9, Pharaoh pulls out the full army. He gets the choice chariots. He gets other chariots. He has leaders. He's got soldiers. He's got people on horses. Like he has pulled out the full army. The whole military has been deployed. It says all in several places. Everybody, all of the military leaders, all the officers, everyone is out here now. And so they are brought out in pursuit of the Israelites. Word got back to Pharaoh that they didn't go 3 days into the wilderness to worship. They just kept walking. They out here acting free. They didn't let go and kept walking. And in verse 5, it says, the heart of Pharaoh and his servants. So it's not just Pharaoh. Pharaoh has people in his ear who are saying, why do we do this? Has turned against the people, and they said, why have we done this? Why have we let Israel go from serving us? Why do we let our slaves go? Now we got to go to work. It was cool for a couple of days, and now I'm starting to notice this pile up around here. A lot of these dishes not getting done. This straw is not being turned into brick. Like the work is unfinished, and who's going to do it? And so it says he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. He took 600 chosen chariots and captains. So that's 600 captains that are over these chariots. And then he has everybody. It says that he went out with other chariots and horsemen and his army. And so what they do is they travel out to go find them and bring them back. And they go out and they see where they are. And as they approach them, the people see them and get scared. But what God does is he moves the cloud that's been leading them in front, or that pillar of fire that's been leading them in the front. He moves it to the rear of the camp. He literally stands as a barrier between his people and the army pursuing them. And it made it so that the Egyptians' hearts remained hard, so that they were going to follow them still. They didn't just like, oh, it's foggy, we can't go. They would stay in anger and pursuit, but they couldn't get him. They couldn't reach him. They couldn't see him. They couldn't make their way through. It is nothing but the hand of God standing between you and the foolishness that is pursuing you. And thank God for Jesus, because we are protected and safe. We are adopted into the family of God. And we are safe by God's hand because we've been adopted into the faith through our confession of sin, through our belief in Christ and our repentance. So in verse 11, and I jumped a little bit, but I'm coming back to this one. In verse 11, the people saw the soldiers, they saw the army, they saw the chariots and horses and all of this. They see everything and they get scared. And they said to Moses, did you bring us out in the wilderness to die because it wasn't enough graves in Egypt? Like, we could have just died there. They have brand new freedom. They are terrified of the future. They have no plan. They have no understanding. They are holding on to the prophecy that somebody was given hundreds of years ago. They are holding on to the hope that this is really God's provision for them. And they are scared. And they're like, look, Moses, man, the army is here. They're huge. We know what they're capable of. And they're like, why would you bring us out here? We told you to just leave us alone. They're waiting for God to come and like scoop them up and put them in the promised land. They didn't expect to have to do any work. And when they have to do the work, they're afraid because they don't know who they are in God yet. They still see themselves as the slaves that they were when they woke up a couple days ago. They still see themselves as the people in need of salvation. They do not see themselves as members of God's family. They do not see themselves as protected by a holy God. So God is going to show them. And so that's exactly what he does. This angel of God or the hand of God or this cloud or this pillar of fire, this is now standing in between them, blocking them. God is standing in that space. And so they can't, the Egyptians cannot see through this, and the Egyptians cannot reach past it to get to the Israelites to pull them back into captivity. So God gives Moses the instruction to stretch out his hand over the sea. Stretch your hand out over the sea, and God is going to cause a strong east wind to come at night. And so this east wind is going to come, and what it does is it's going to blow the waters to the side to create a wall of water on the left and the right so that the Israelites can walk a path straight through the center on dry ground. So the east wind is going to come and blow the waters. If this wind is strong enough to blow the waters and create and hold them in place and create a wall, I am certain it is strong enough to dry up that sand and mud at the bottom of the ocean. Or the bottom of this sea. And so what happens is Moses follows that instruction. He stretches his hand out. The wall of water, the wind blows and the water becomes a wall on either side for them. And they pass through on dry ground. And as they are passing through, they're being led by, as they're passing through, they see in verse 23, as they are passing through, the Egyptians pursued them and went after them into the middle of the sea. It says, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. So, as they are passing through, the Egyptians can now see them and can move again, and they begin to move forward behind them. And it says that in the morning, the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud and troubled the host of the Egyptians. So now the pillar of fire that is leading them, God is actually using, is in that space and is looking and saying, okay, y'all following? Good job. That's what I wanted you to do. I wanted you to step on out in here feeling like the blessing that's for my people is for you. Sometimes when you see people that seem to be prospering in the same way that you are, even though they are the person that's giving you the hardest time at work, they seem to be getting promoted right along with you. They are the people who are giving you the worst trouble, but they seem to be getting every blessing that you get, and you're like, come on, God. I'm working way too hard. I am doing what you're asking me to do, and it is not coming through for me. And you have to do something, Lord. So when that's happening, just trust and understand that God knows what he is doing. And so they followed them right out on that dry ground, walked right between the walls of water that God created for them, right on this path of salvation that the Israelites were given. And so God begins to trouble them. And by troubling them, that means he starts messing with them. So their chariot wheels are getting stuck in this mud. These people are walking across on dry land, but your chariot wheels are getting stuck and won't spin. You're unable to steer. The horses are not cooperating in the way that they need to. They're not following the instructions. So they are having a hard time, and it's slowing them down from catching up. And so in verse 25, at the end, it says, "Let the Egyptians say, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." They are like, look, man, this is getting hard to do. It's like their God is fighting on their behalf. He's messing with our wheels. The wheels won't turn. There's no logical reason why the wheels won't turn. The horses won't move forward. We sitting out here and we can't, we keep struggling to get to them. And now this whole decision to chase after them and follow them out into the sea doesn't seem to be making sense anymore. And so they are ready to turn around and go back. But in verse 26, God tells Moses, "Stretch your hand back out over this sea, and that the waters may come down on the Egyptians, on their chariots and their horsemen." And Moses does it. And the sea returns to where it's supposed to be. Now, this is not an all at once kind of thing. And we see that it's not an all at once kind of thing because it says in 27, verse 27, that Moses stretched his hand out and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. So as they are running out, so we have this very long space. And so the Israelites are moving and the Egyptians are following them. And as they go, at some point they're starting to get a gap between them because God is messing with them and they can't move forward in the way they want to. So after a while, Moses begins to put his hand out over the sea according to God's instructions. And the walls of water begin to close where the Egyptians are. So the Israelites can continue their path as they're walking. Now, several hours are passing. This is overnight. Like, this is a whole day and night that the stuff is taking place in. So this is not a quick, let's run across this sea real fast. This is several hours. And so in verse 27, it talks about the sea returning. And in 28, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and horsemen and all of the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them, but the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them. As they walked, so as this water is still very much being a wall here, it's starting to collapse in as it goes, and they are walking across. And Pharaoh's army, who followed them into the sea, got all the way out there to the middle and got themselves drowned completely. There was none left. None left. I know, and sometimes you see in the movies, there's a couple officers sitting up on the rocks on the side. I don't see that here. There were none left. It says, there remained not so much as one of them. The entire army was destroyed. God has destroyed their peace, their homes. He took out the Nile. He took out every crop. Between locusts and hail and fire, he took out all the crops, and now their army is gone. He decimated Egypt in order to free his people. And in the last two verses, 30 and 31, it says, "The Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw the great work which the Lord did. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses." So when people seem to be getting blessed the same way you getting blessed, and they are a struggle and a half, they not believers, they giving you the hardest time because they know you are a believer. Trust God. Let him handle it. Stop trying to, I know God said he gonna make our enemies our footstools, but don't try and make them your footstool on your own. Don't be out here trying to step on people. Let God do what he got to do. Because sometimes your peace, while they're bothering you, is the thing that's going to be the light and the salvation to somebody else in that office. It's going to be the saving grace. It's going to be the only church. It's going to be the only Jesus that somebody else gets to see. So don't give up your witness trying to get back, and let God handle it. Because God absolutely handled these Egyptians. for his people. So, quick recap. God actually is leading the Israelites by a pillar of fire or a cloud, and he leads them to the sea and tells them to camp. Pharaoh and his servants and his officers and everybody else is like, why in the world do we let these people go? We should have never done that. And they're like, let's get everybody. So Pharaoh pulls together the whole army and goes out and pursues them. When he gets there, God has created a barrier between them so he can't reach him. Gives Moses the instruction to stretch your hand out over the sea. And literally the waters move. He sends a wind that causes the waters to move and create walls on the side so they can walk across on dry land. So they walk themselves across on dry land. And as they are going, then Pharaoh and his army see that they're moving and they go ahead out there too. And they get out there and the Israelites are able to walk across safely because the path was for them. And the Egyptians find themselves drowned. And it says that there's not one that remained. And so they are saved. And because of that, they have a new belief and understanding of God as a provider, as a miracle worker, as somebody who can protect them, as somebody who is going to look out for and care for them. They get to understand and believe that this is not just Moses, that the God that we've been praying to is honestly here. And everybody around who is hearing the story of what happened is hearing now how God delivered his people. And they understand and recognize that this is the true God here. So please keep in mind that it is your job to make sure that you walk the path that God has for you and that you don't let your desire to get back cause you to step out into a space that puts you at risk. Don't let revenge, don't let I change my mind, don't let I feel like I need to get my lick back. Don't let that turn you into Pharaoh and have you drowned out here. Make sure that you are always walking in the path that God gave you. All right, y'all. Be blessed.